How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse and I'm back for another comic book video in MLJ month. Now, on this one, we're going to cover one of my favorite heroes from the MLJ comic books that was in Impact Comics. Now, I know the ones from MLJ and Impact are not the same ones, but I like this one because he was more identifiable to me because Impact came out when I was a teenager, I believe. The 90s? Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to go ahead and in this video, we're going to cover The Fly. This video was recommended by Bucky749. If you have any recommendation for future videos, you can go ahead and leave me a comment. Here's to you, Bucky, and let's get this video started. The Fly is in fact not a Golden Age character. He is on the very edge of the Silver Age, almost the Bronze Age. But since this is MLJ month, we're going to go ahead and do it anyways. The Fly first appeared in The Double Life of Private Strong #1 in 1959 under Red Circle Comics, which we know as MLJ. The creator of The Fly was Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. And if you've watched any of my videos or know anything about comics, then you recognize those names. Okay, I promise that I am not making this up. The first Fly, Thomas Troy, was left at an orphanage when he was a young boy, and he would be adopted by the March family, Abigail and Ben. One day he was rooting around the attic and he discovered something called the fly ring. He put it on his finger and it began to glow. On the wall he was able to see a being known as Turin, which is emissary of the Fly people. The Fly people are a race of beings from another dimension that were reduced to the size of insignificant flies. I don't know what that has to do with the rest of the story. Tommy, being pure of heart, would be a good choice to be a hero to fight crime. All he had to do was put on the ring and say, "I wish I were the Fly," and then he would become the superhero known as the Fly. Some of his powers would be size alteration, animal control and animal empathy, enhanced vision, super strength, and he could fly. Now, in the early days, he had weaknesses to bright lights, which would daze and confuse him, but he would eventually overcome that. Along with the fly ring, he would also have something called the buzz gun, which he could use to paralyze and put people to sleep. Now, the Fly comic would run for a number of issues before its cancellation, and would then later come back when they redid the Mighty Crusaders comic books in the early 80s. Now, keeping in the tradition of many comic book superheroes, and MLJ being no exception to this trope, Thomas Troy also had a civilian identity where he is a lawyer, and that played into a number of the plot lines. Now, an interesting thing that I have found while doing the research is it did look for a while that he was known as Flyman, even though his introduction to the comics was Fly. I think he started being referred to as Flyman when Fly Girl showed up. But in many instances, he was still the Fly. So the Fly and the Flyman are essentially the same superhero. The new addition to the Fly would be Fly Girl. Fly Girl is Kimberly Brand. She was rescued by the Fly and she became essentially a love interest for him. And why not? All superheroes need a love interest. Later, one of the Fly's enemies thought that he could beat the Fly by having two crimes going off at the same time. Turin would appear again and would offer Kim Brand the chance to have a fly ring of her own. She accepted, and she became the Fly Girl. She could transform into the Fly Girl by rubbing the ring, and she would transform into the female version of the Fly. Let's see, transformation. Her powers are transformation, obviously, flight, wall crawling, super strength, super sight, and she had a modicum of animal control. She could control butterflies and flies. She also had a buzz gun, but she did also have a weakness as well. Her powers only lasted for 1 hour every 24 hours. So this was just like Our Man, but instead of drinking a formula, she had a ring. Now, in the early 1990s, Impact Comics would hit the shelf. Now, I didn't realize that these were DC Comics at the time, but apparently that they were. The Fly #1 first appeared in 1991. It was Jason Troy. He was a high school student, and his teacher had him create a superhero. When he went home that night, he made a superhero that was very much resembles a fly. The teacher gave him what looked like a fly encased in amber, and having this allowed him to transform into the fly, with that amber fly being part of his center chest plate. He was able to make the costume alter, because at first he looked like a freak, and then he turned to look more like a superhero. When he went back to school the next day to confront the teacher wasn't there, and nobody remembers the teacher except for him. And then there was a note left for him about him being a superhero. I've collected the comic books. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, so I don't know if the teacher comes back. Among his many abilities, he has the ability to fly. Of course he doesn't. Wouldn't be to fly without that. He has super strength. For the most part, is invulnerable, being bulletproof, fireproof, and almost incapable of harm. But he could probably take damage from armor-piercing shells, and he does have a form of energy projection. He uses his stomach acid as a projectile weapon, which, if you ask me, is disgusting. Now, he does have one weakness, and it's very reminiscent of the Flash. He requires a large amount of energy, or he can become exhausted. So he's constantly filling up on food and sports drinks just to be able to keep his energy going, because if he runs out, he's done. In 1999, Steve Ditko would get the rights back from The Fly. The previous holder of The Fly, their rights would end, and the creation of The Fly reverted back to Steve Ditko. So moving forward, they were not able to use The Fly, so instead they would use Fly Girl, because even though Steve Ditko did a lot of drawings and work with Fly Girl did actually belong to MLJ. Now, I know in the Infinite Crisis, DC attempted to bring some of the MLJ, Red Circle Comics, however you want to call it, characters and the mighty creators over to the DC main. I don't know how that ended up. I know Convergence had a large part in finishing up some of these people's storylines. The Fly Girl would go on to be part of Archie Comics in the 2012 new Crusader series. I don't know if The Fly will ever come back to the MLJ comic books. Steve Ditko is no longer with us, so if they were to get the rights back, it would have to go through his estate. So only a time is going to tell on that one. Well, of course, I couldn't talk about The Fly without going over Fly Girl as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Kind of an unintended twofer, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be coming out with some more soon. MLJ month still continues. Until next time, I'll be seeing you.